Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast, and we are back following yet another fourth quarter loss. The Giants fall to the Green Bay Packers 27-20, and Cranky Fan is putting on his Tampa Bay Lightning hat because they just thrashed the Devils because Jack Hughes decided that he wanted to eat some dinner some night and then cut his hand on broken glass or whatever. So, yeah, I mean,
Boy,
it is.
Encapsulate your sports year, huh, Grump?
Hey, you know what? It's a couple week injury. The Devils are still in first place in the entire NHL. I think
They're a good team.
they were the first team to 10 wins. I think they're up to 13 at this point. So I mean, I can deal with losing to a very good Tampa Bay Lightning team tonight without Jack Hughes. But getting back to our New York Giants, this was a big week. You know, I know it feels like much of the same, a fourth quarter loss, whatever. But this is Mike Kafka's first week. He had a lot of things to deal with. He had to name a starting quarterback. He had to deal with Jackson Dart. So there's a lot of stuff to get into. First and foremost, how you doing, Cranky Fan?
Whew. I made the right call of giving my tickets to Cranky wife and her friend. So I went down to Atlantic City and was watching the game down there after dealing with another Gator loss at Ole Miss. So it was a tough weekend for me again, as they are every single week. But it was fun. It's fun watching a game in a sports book. It's amazing hearing these random people yell at a 4-yard gain in a secondary game that's not the game you're watching because they obviously have money on it. So it's always a great atmosphere, and it's good to see my cousins and friends down there. Game itself, again, I'm just so numb at this point that anger and frustration and upsetness doesn't happen to me anymore. I'm just kind of looking, everything to me is what are green shoots for the future? And with Mike Kafka right now and Jameis Winston right now are placeholders, but you know, Mike Kafka could be something just a talking point at the end of the year. And the only way that can happen is to see how he handles his team. Wins and losses should not be relevant because he doesn't have his starting quarterback, doesn't have his number one wide receiver, doesn't have his best running back, all of these things. But there's a lot of things to see, and we'll break it down in this game. The things we saw that were a little encouraging, and that means what we saw on the field and even off the field.
Yeah, and the first thing and I think a lot of this game we're going to be talking about Mike Kafka in general, but we'll have a larger Mike Kafka segment in a little bit. But in the context of this game, the first decision that Mike Kafka had to deal with was the quarterback situation, right? So you have Jackson Dart, and
predicted by me on this show last week.
Yeah, that's true. And also,
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the larger thing is that they didn't even play the game of like, oh, Jackson's in the concussion protocol, so we'll see. Like, there was no we'll see. There's none of that. They just shut that down right away, which again, that leads to me that, like, as fluky as the play was that Jackson Dart got hurt, I don't think it's amplified by the amount of times he runs or the style in which he runs. It's just a football play that happened on. You can argue with me until you're blue in the face. I'm going to argue back until neither one of us convinces each other. So don't waste your time.
Well, let's talk about.
Well, I mean,
the fact what you just said was very important, though, that they didn't waste time and try to play the cat and mouse game with the media and the opposing team about, well, we'll make our decision and we're still evaluating, which was one of the big criticisms that Brian Dable had. Was everything was paranoia and not saying anything and being tight-lipped, and this was. Jameis Winston's our starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It was as matter of fact as when Brian Dable came out to the media and just said, like, Jackson Dart's starting. This was my decision. That was a moment in which Brian Dable was matter of fact. But I mean, it just leads me to believe that the injury to Jackson Dart was a step too far for some people. There's certainly other factors, and there definitely should be other factors. But I think it was a major contributing factor to Brian Dable just being kicked to the curb. Is that shit's all fine and good when you're winning, and when you're not, and then he gets hurt, it's not funny anymore.
In a vacuum, I think it would have been not a big deal, but with everything that's going on, like the straw that broke the camel's back.
So, and it almost seemed like the obvious decision that Mike Kafka went to Jameis Winston. The way Russell Wilson came in Jackson Dart's relief last week was just like, I mean, you might as well put a wide receiver in at quarterback, a high school quarterback that converted to some other position for the NFL.
Well,
like
we
the
saw it a
Denver
couple weeks
Broncos had to
earlier.
do in 2020.
Yeah, we saw it a couple weeks earlier. Remember when Dart went into I think it was the same play when Dable ran into the tent. Remember Wilson came in and threw one right at a lineman's feet or something, and
Yeah,
it
it was a
was
whole
just catch.
mess. Yeah, and
It was a
Brian
whole
Dable was
mess. He had a
losing
bruise
his
and everything.
Brian Dable
Yeah.
was losing his mind because he couldn't stand seeing Russell Wilson throw another football. And again, like this brings it to the like whose fault is it? And we're not going to know. Maybe we'll find out after everybody's fired or whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like whether that was Joe Shane insisting or whatever, like it's still on Brian Dable. Like I think Joe Shane will humbly sit in the corner and shut up if he puts in Jameis Winston and they win a game, as opposed to Russell Wilson going out there and throwing footballs at people's asses. You know.
Yeah. Fair point.
So I mean, that was the number one thing that Mike Kafka had to do. We later learned that he had to deal with something else. But in terms of this game itself, I know people are trying to like microscope this and like get a handle on who Mike Kafka is as a coach, because he's had a weird time here. He's a quiet guy. He's had play calling taken away from him, given back to him, taken away from him. He essentially was probably going to leave. The Giants blocked interviews from him and then gave him like a bullshit promotion so that he would stay, so they could give him a raise to convince him to stay willingly.
Grump, the headlines were the Wink Martindale fight. But in reality, the coordinator was treated worse.
Oh, yeah.
Was Mike Kafka.
Yeah, and I think he was treated worse, A, because he worked on the same side of the ball as Brian Dable, which is the only side of the ball he cares about. And then the other reason is because it's just his nature. Like, he's a young guy. He's younger than Wink Martindale. He doesn't have the experience that Wink Martindale does. He has not worked around the league with many different kinds of head coaches and know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Where Wink Martindale can stand on his prior experiences and his own talent and just be like, you know what? Fuck you. You know what? Like, I am not having time with this. And you know what I mean? It's in all walks of life and in all kinds of jobs. If you've been around and you kind of know what works and you know what you're capable of, you can say that to a boss, walk out and get another job doing the same thing somewhere else and be happy. Mike Kafka's that young guy who's, on his college internship that's not going to do that, So I think that's part of it too. The hell was I saying about all this? Mike Kafka. I know that.
Leading to his other decision he had.
No. Yes, but we'll get to that in a minute. I know where everyone wants to microscope this and find out who he is as a coach, because we've been told like, oh, this is kind of a big deal for Mike Kafka. He might be auditioning, like whatever, which also seems like just some nonsense that they're throwing into the media echo chamber to like whatever. Some things to keep in mind, like. There's not going to be a massive shift in like offensive philosophy. So like where you'll see differences between him and Brian Dable is probably going to be in the way he communicates with players, the way he communicates with other coaches, the way he communicates with the media, game decisions, which is not like a film thing. Like you don't need to rewatch the All-22 to be like, should he have gone for it here? Should he have challenged this? Should he have called a timeout? Like you can watch all that from the broadcast. So sure. I think maybe like some tendencies in terms of like how aggressive or conservative, those are sort of some things. But again, so that's fine. Like if you want to look for those specific things that I think you can see differences in throughout the next couple of games that he's going to be here, then that's all fine. But this is an incredibly difficult one-game sample size to really glean anything out of. You have a backup quarterback, by the way, a backup quarterback that didn't play in a real game situation under Brian Dable, so you have nothing really to compare it to in terms of things being specifically for Jameis or whatever. He's got no Malik Neighbors, no Cam Scatterbo, no Darius Slayton. So like, I'm not really sure entirely what you think. Not you, but anyone thinks they're gonna really get something so matter of fact out of. If you want to put some like evidence in there as like some interesting things that he did, he ran the ball a lot. He never gave up on the run game in this, and it started to punish the Packers late in the game. Like early on, it was not really getting much for them. And again, you don't have Cam Scatterbo, where I think that makes a big difference. You don't have Jackson Dart and the threat of his own reads. I think that makes a difference. But the commitment was there. And, the Giants were never really in a bad position score-wise where they could stay committed to this and down to a late game interception from Jameis, had a real shot to win this game with backups all over the place.
And even that you have to kind of put a little bit of asterisk because the conditions were awful.
That's
You saw
also true. Yeah.
kicks flying all over the place. The potential for the deep pass or the medium range, might have been affected by the wind. So, again, if you're just, you make the point that we made a commitment to the run, but I wouldn't say, oh, that is a characteristic of Mike Kafka going forward because this was a very unique game in that data set we're going to have for the next 7 or so.
So in terms of the game itself, I didn't see anything too crazy. I thought all time management stuff, the challenges, they were all, within acceptable limits for me. I think the play that he didn't challenge that I think he probably could have won, I understand why you don't do it because you already challenged something, and I don't really know that it was worth it that early in the game to potentially lose and then have no challenges. It's sort of a tricky thing to juggle.
And I
But
think
but
going
the
for it on
challenge he
4th down
lost, I
more.
think, was acceptable.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like being very aggressive on 4th down, I think that has much to do it. Again, the conditions
Hmm.
and who was kicking and success they were having running the ball too. I think you kind of factor all those things in. So yeah, again, it's fun to see and be like, oh, okay, he's gonna go for it. There is certainly not well, he's got nothing to lose. That's bullshit. That's what fans like to say. It doesn't mean there is something to play for, something to lose with these guys. So I I I, I would be curious as we watch going forward the rest of the year. Do we see these kind of new tendencies, or is it gonna hopefully be game dependent, against the opponent, the situation, weather conditions, and all these different things. So,
Um, yes, I agree with all of that. I think also one last thing is that Jameis Winston gives you. I mean, maybe I'm actually just kind of guessing at this. I should not say this without going back and looking at Jameis Winston over time, but I just feel like Jameis Winston gives you better chances on 4th and 1 sneaking the ball than Russell Wilson. Um,
yeah, Russell Wilson doesn't want to get hit anymore. Yeah, I
um,
mean, I'm going to give you my Jameis take, and again, I promised everybody over the off season, and I'm going to be true to that promise. I'm not going to put any personal feeling about Jameis Winston in any of these analysis for Jameis. I thought we had a Jameis Winston game. I thought that you know if this was a one game situation, if Jackson Dart's going to be back next week against Detroit, he did exactly what you wanted. He put us in a position to win. He made throws that a lot of quarterbacks can't make. I think he got I think he got the benefit of zero hands from the Packers offense, offense and defense. It could have been a couple of picks early on. Um, the touchdown, the interception at the end was, certainly not his fault. We're going to get into that play later on, I'm sure, also. But I thought he was fine. Um, that's what we got him for games like this. If Jackson Dart for some reason has revealed he's out for the rest of the year, it will scare me having him for 6 and 7 more games. Get increasingly more frustrating. But for that little get us through to Dart is back, clearing concussion protocol, but he was fine.
I think he's exactly what we wanted him to be. This
Yeah.
was a game in which you don't want your backup quarterback in, right? Where he's missing 3 offensive weapons. Um,
Hmm.
this is not that you want your backup quarterback to be filling in for your quarterback who had a concussion and he's the only one hurt on the offense, right? And he's just got to
Yeah,
hold
of
it down.
course.
Um, and I think even with those limitations, the Giants came away with this, like losing by 7 to a team that really thought they were going to be playoff contenders. They went out and traded for Micah Parsons to make that a thing. The reason that they were 5-3-1 leading coming into this game, that's a whole other conversation. But regardless, I thought Jameis Winston played pretty well. I mean, this is exactly what you pay him this much money for, is to be this. Now there were some dropped interceptions that happened early in the game. You take that with everything else that you get with Jameis, which is he doesn't let it bother him if it happens first play of the game. It's not going to throw him off for the rest of the game. He's going to stay Jameis, which is a good thing, right? That's an Eli Manning trait right there. It's just not letting the bad plays ruin the rest of your day.
And
Um,
also, in in an alternative universe, maybe some of those picks aren't picks if he's throwing to legitimate
That's another good
targets.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the end game pick was, it's Jalen Hyatt's fault. Like, Bobby did a really good film breakdown, which I think you can only get if you're a Giants Nation show Patreon. But he highlights, oh man, I'll give you guys a sneak peek. He highlights how they ran that play earlier in the game, and you can see that Jalen Hyatt completes that route. It's the same play. And then I guess for whatever reason, Jalen Hyatt just didn't keep running the route. Now, it's also been pointed out on Twitter that, like, Jameis Winston didn't really throw a good ball. Like, I'm not really sure Jalen Hyatt has any chance of catching it. But the fact remains is that he's in the way of the DB. He can jump up to try and catch it, knock the ball down. He can play DB if he wants to. Like, it doesn't matter. It's on Jalen Hyatt. Another reporter, I don't remember who, I want to say Ryan Dunleavy, but another reporter said, like, yeah, Jalen Hyatt in the locker room knew that he screwed up. He was devastated, whatever. So, yeah, I think you got a prototypical Jameis Winston game here where he was confident throwing the ball in the wind, throwing fastballs in the wind that were not affected by it. He was hitting guys in strides, guy that he hadn't really worked with, like Isaiah Hodgins, Theo Johnson. He didn't
lose a game because of him.
No, not at all. You could have.
And that's the bottom line. That's pretty much the best thing you can say about a backup quarterback. We didn't lose because of him.
Yeah.
And if he does that, fine.
Yeah. Listen, you're gonna get that though, right? Like, if those dropped interceptions early in the game, if none of them were dropped, we probably lost this game because of Jameis Winston. So, but again, this is why you pay him this much money, is because he can keep it going for you. It's possible, and it's like there's only like, I don't know what, like 8 backup quarterbacks to be distributed among 32 that are this caliber of, like, gives you a legit shot to win. I don't know.
Considering there's only about 25 legitimate starting quarterbacks in the NFL, that is a pretty good number for backups.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all the Jameis Winston talk.
Yeah.
In terms of this game,
can I ask really quickly, just Giant fans or casual Giant fans, stop acting like assholes when you watch Jameis Winston. I mean, I get it. You're excited. I'm not sure why you're excited more about Jameis Winston than seeing Jackson Dart, but if he completes a pass for a first down, let's not keep banging your hands on the tables and be like, there's Jameis cooking. I mean, come on, guys, relax. It's Jameis. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was going to leak in. I knew it.
No, it's all good. You kind of had the misfortune of watching the game in, like, the worst environment for legit football thought, probably.
That's true. That is true. But a lot of the narrative, with the sheep say from the parrots is like, oh, Jameis is so exciting. He is so entertaining. He is so this and that. And I think people just run with that. And it's like, okay, that was a pass that 95% of the NFL quarterbacks should make.
Yeah. Yeah. The pass, there was no pass in this game from Jameis Winston that is like, wow, what a throw. But there was plenty of, like, that was exactly what we needed. That was a good throw. Like, just a lot of good throws. These are all throws. Exactly. Like, if your starting quarterback makes those throws, you're happy, but, like, you expect him to make those throws. If he doesn't make those throws, then you're getting pissed. So, there was no, like,
last 3-4 years ending a season.
Yeah, there was no, like, deep shot. There was no hole shot that was just like, wow, way to thread a needle. But there were plenty of good passes, especially on third down.
I think you might see some of those opportunities next week when you're playing indoors in Detroit, as opposed to that wind tunnel that was the Meadowlands on Sunday.
True, but I do think we're getting Jackson Dart next week. So I want to talk about Mike Kafka.
Okay.
And what we found out later, Abdul Carter sat the first series. It's known news now, but Abdul Carter was sat for disciplinary reasons for the first series of the game because he slept through a 15-minute walkthrough. He later came back, and I don't want to, like, rehash the whole story in absolute detail, but he came back to the story and was like, oh, I wasn't sleeping. I was actually getting treatment within the Giants facility. It later came out through later articles that he was at a specific treatment room that I think is nowhere near a lot of the other stuff. He was in a specific treatment bed. And also the The one thing that was reported that Mike Kafka was doing differently throughout the week was times were changing from the normal. So like meeting times, like the schedule got all jumbled up this week. He did that intentionally, I think. For one reason or another, we don't know what they are. Maybe just preference. Maybe he thought there was going to be something that would come from that or whatever. But that is the fact of the matter, is that Mike Kafka had to. Now, in that story, which was not refuted by Paul Schwartz, who kind of defended Abdul Carter, and was not refuted by Abdul Carter, is that he missed that walkthrough, but he's also been consistent throughout this year being late to meetings and shit. And that is the general Brian Daboll star treatment, letting his players get away with things and not treating him the same way, not holding them as accountable as he holds his coaches, who he screams at openly in front of other people.
This culture of this team needs to change. And if it's something little things like I'm going to throw you off the norm by changing times for workouts and for meetings and this, you that anything you can do to shake up, the status quo, and including in changing that status quo is repercussions for not following rules. I mean, the days of Tom Coughlin finding you for not being 5 minutes early are over. That's not coming back. The between the union and between how much money these guys make and how fast coaches get run in this league now, you're never going to see the ultra disciplinarians and the drill sergeants of past. But at the same point, this is not Club Med. This is not, oh, it would be great if the players actually showed up for a meeting or something. So I applaud it. At the end of the day, what does it mean for the 2025 team? You kind of are what you are as a culture and as a team and as what you do. But, if we're kind of extrapolating this into what is Mike Kafka potential for being the coach in 2026, either with the Giants or a different team, these are definitely things in the positive ledger for him.
I think that this is. I know people are like both sidesing this one, right? Like the one side is like he disciplined a star player. That's good. Way to go, Mike Kafka. And then the other side of it is like he benched him for a series for missing an entire walkthrough, and he's been late to meetings all year. Like Joe Judge benched Andrew Thomas for an entire quarter for being late to something. And I think that there's a difference between disciplining and being a disciplinarian, right? Like
Yes.
Joe Judge was a teacher first and foremost. And so what he demanded was your 100% effort and your 100% attention to detail. That was like the foundational pillar for Joe Judge, the head coach. I don't think Mike Kafka is that guy, and I don't think you need to. I think you just need to understand that they're like, guys, come on, we're professionals here. You guys got to focus. You got to be here on time. You got to show up to work like you're going up to any other job. You can't be 20 minutes late all the time. Your car broke down. You're late one time. I get it. You're late 3 times this week. Like, figure it the hell out. Like, whatever.
You have to develop a trust. I mean, his role with the team has changed. He is in the big seat. He's the one who's, on the sideline. He's the head coach now. And making massive culture changes mid-season is not going to work because that's what this team is. If he comes back next year, after a whole offseason, roster churn, dead wood is gone, new rookies come in, this is Jackson Dart's team next year, no ands, ifs, or buts. You might be able to push it more. But right now you have to toe that line between, you just got rid of a coach where we think that they lost a locker room. There's 7 weeks left in a season that's going nowhere. You can't 180 everything immediately. So I think he did the right thing in the way he did it. And we'll see how this goes for the rest of this season. And if he's back next year, if it's more significant with the penalties and the rules.
So I guess I posed this question to Bobby, and I'm curious on what you think. You're more tinfoil hat than he is,
Oh, of
and
course.
and me. So, but I guess people were kind of clamoring, the beat writers all week, is like, what's Kafka doing differently in practice? Which is like, beat writers don't really get to watch that much practice. There's a portion that's open to them, and then it's closed doors. So what do you really think he's going to see differently? Like, either it's going to be drastically different, or they're not going to see anything. And what was reported is like, well, basically the only thing he's done differently that I can see is he keeps changing the time of the meetings. Like, they're all different than what they normally were, right? And everybody took that as like, okay, whatever. I don't know what to make of that. Is it possible that these meeting times were being changed not to specifically trick Abdul Carter, but to, I guess, force this situation where somebody would be late or miss something because they weren't paying attention, because they phoned it in, and like a way to, I don't know, just set the culture, right? Like just to set this situation up where it's just like, look, I told you to be here at 9 a.m. You missed it. I'm docking you, whatever. I'm fining you or whatever. Is it possible that this was like, what other, I mean, I guess there's other reasons to move the times for a bunch of meetings and walkthroughs and shit, but like, I don't know. If you have people who are late all the time, don't you think that that's at least a possibility that someone's going to miss the whole fucking thing because you've just changed the whole schedule that you've been sticking to for 10 weeks now?
I definitely think he wanted to change the status quo of mixing some things up. I don't think his goal was to, make an example of somebody for the rest of the team. I think it's more about because the arguments. Well, you changed it, and I wasn't. This team is not in the mindset yet of being in boot camp, and if you all of a sudden change stuff up, and it's just like, whoa, okay. I mean, if he would have kept all the times exactly the same, and then Abdul Carter was late again, and then you put the hammer on him, that's more of an attention getter than. I think this is just to kind of, you know, pour cold water on these guys' faces that we're not just going through the rest of the season exactly how we did it before.
I also, I actually like the idea that he only benched Abdul Carter for a series because it's a different story, right? When Joe Judge comes in there and he's like, I'm in charge. This is the way I run things. I was hired as the head coach of the New York Giants. You will be here on time. And then you're late. I mean, you've set that culture and you've set that tone and you're the head coach. Mike Kafka was not hired as the New York Giants head coach, and he is not a disciplinarian, and he didn't come in here day one and say, like, all of these things. He's a coach who was elevated, and it's not missed on the Giants players. They're aware of that. Sure. So he can't come in here and just swing a sledgehammer as punishment. I think you do have to start with...
Fuck you.
Exactly. You have to start with the spanking.
Contract. You don't.
Exactly.
I make more than you. You don't. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
So you do something where you lay down the law, you make your voice heard, you nip it in the bud, but also like you're not treating them like shit because you're different than the guy that's been here for the last 3 years, 4 years. So
and you're also trying to win too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna take your one of your best talent guys, maybe not your best performing guys, one of your best talent guys, and sit a quarter. To prove some point that may be falling on deaf ears because of the situation. What are we really doing?
Well, I guess the bigger thing too is like, what does this not get the point across? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're a new guy in town. Again, like I said, like this isn't an established rule that's been around this whole time. Clearly not, because it's been broken time and time again throughout this whole year. So I mean, like, what exactly? Like, all you're trying to do is send a message. The message is received the same way. You might as well go lighter on and then make people mad at you. And the only one who's really going, like the only people that are going to be really affected by a heavy loss of play like that are people with incentives in their contract, not people on rookie deals. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm perfectly happy with the way it was handled. I think some people are kind of waiting for Shane Bowen to be fired, and I don't think Shane Bowen should be the defensive coordinator, but I don't really know. At this point, firing the head coach, you've got Mike Kafka in there. He's made executive decisions, with discipline. He's made executive decisions at the quarterback position. I don't know really what you gain in terms of firing Shane Bowen now. I'm not really sure that you've got another guy who's going to step up and do a better job and
You know what you
help
get
you win
now?
games. So what's the
The only
point?
thing you get now is the pound of flesh you want because you're frustrated with this team over this year and the past 10 years.
Right.
It's, I want to feel better that this guy doesn't deserve to be here anymore. He needs to be out today. And teams don't work like that. There has to be a plan to replace. Who on the Giants coaching staff can come in tomorrow and be the defensive coordinator? And don't give me the smart ass answer, anybody, well, he's so shitty, anybody can do it. That's
Yeah,
not the way it
that's really
works.
stupid too. I
It's
mean,
not the way it works.
I know people are gonna say Andre Patterson, but Andre Patterson's never been a defensive coordinator. I don't think, and I don't think
Right.
he's ever been an interim defensive coordinator. Maybe he was on an interim basis, but like, I think the reality is what people want is they want Shane Bowen to be. I think so. If I'm wrong, whatever. Don't take it personally. I'm guessing here, but I think what people want is they want Shane Bowen to be fired. Then they want to see the defense actually look pretty decent, not great, but they want to know that like the last 4 years, even if they don't like Joe Shane, that this team that's been assembled is not as bad as what they've seen, and that simply by changing the coach, they're already that much better. Where maybe we don't need 3 new safeties, 5 new corners, 4 new linebackers, and an entirely new defensive line. You know what I mean? Like, I get
You know
that.
when you get that answer, Grump? You get that answer in the offseason when you bring in a new defensive coordinator. He can implement his defense with this roster going forward. You don't do it in the middle of the season where, okay, he's going to come in, he's going to change the whole scheme around. No,
Well,
you
that's the other
spend
thing
your
too.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you spend your time. Remember, Monday you don't practice. Tuesdays walk. Wednesday, Thursday you practice. You are preparing for the next opponent. You're not spending time on fundamentals. You're not spending time on implementing a new scheme. You are preparing for the next team at hand. So this is not the time. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't. There's no, you know, there's no switch all of a sudden that Banks is going to be a great cornerback now all of a sudden because you're a different defensive coordinator. There's no evidence in football history of things like this happen. If you know, we all agree, even if they would have kept Dable next year, we all agree that Bowden would have been back next year, right? Because he probably would have been the sacrificial lamb to save your job.
Oh,
So
Bowen wouldn't have been back next year.
Shane would not be back in 2026.
I think we all agree on that.
Right, right. He would have been the first. He would have been the sacrifice to save his job. So knowing and that was the most likely thing, I can live with the fact that something, we're 2-8. We're not changing a defensive coordinator away from making the playoffs. I don't want to have this conversation yet, but it's probably in best interest this team loses the way that's the way out. But you're not getting better by bringing in a different defensive coordinator. It's not in mid-flight.
Well, I
You'll
mean,
feel better maybe
I think
until they look even shittier.
this is just one of those things that always happens where it's an instant gratification society now, and this isn't me like bitching about society now. It's just the reality of the internet and everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when
Sure.
free agency in any sport opens up and it gets to be 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, come on, why haven't we made a move yet? It's like because free agency is several months long. Like it's been a
Yeah.
couple of hours. Like
Yeah.
that. This doesn't mean that nothing is going to happen. So, and a lot of times the guys who make a lot of the moves right off the bat end up being one of the teams that suck the most. So,
Right.
and this is that thing, right? Like at this point with this record and firing your head coach, fans are in off-season mode. How do we get better? Whatever. And so you want to pull the trigger to fire him because that means that you're on your way to getting better.
It means the
the
offseason started
first
sooner.
the first thing you do to get better as a defense is you have to hire a new coach. And in order to hire a new coach, you got to fire your current coach. So that's where people are at. They're like, why are we still at step one? It's because you
And
don't really get to step two by doing step one now. You can't
also,
really do step two yet.
Mike Kafka is an offensive guy. He was the offensive coordinator. You know, he may not know yet even what kind of defense he wants to run. Going
Well, that
forward.
doesn't even
So,
matter. You're not going to change the scheme. Like that's just
well,
not
that's my
something
point,
that
though. It's
happens.
even like maybe is not as good an evaluator of the defensive staff that they have now to say this guy could be the next,
Right.
the interim defensive coordinator. That's not his. That's not his expertise thing. He doesn't have experience as being a head coach to have gone through that process
Well,
before.
also that's not
So
his experience here. Like, I assume that he's had his offensive duties and most of his relationships are on the offensive side of the ball.
Right, right. So you're asking someone who's been a head coach for approximately 1 week to take on all the responsibilities he's never had before, and in addition, you know, make a major move to smoke your coordinator and have the experience and expertise to say, of the people I have now, this is the guy he needs to be. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think also you're just putting too much pressure on a first time interim
Mhm.
head coach. He's a young guy. I think he's like my age. So I mean, like, I just, as much as I'm like Shane Bowen needs to go, and it should be like one of the first things they do as soon as the season's over. It just, I don't think that it helps Mike Kafka any, and I don't think it helps the team
And
much.
I also think that, if you want to even talk about Shane more so even than Kafka, I don't think their record the rest of the season from now to the end is a fair or even may even be a, a data point for determining who's back next year and the direction the team wants to go. So
I mean, I agree with you, but are you talking on the coach level or all
coach
roster?
level and even Joe Shane level.
Yeah, yeah. See, I don't want to have that conversation because I'm sure some people feel adamantly about it, and I'm not ready for the Joe Shane talk yet, but it'll happen. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
so random thought on Mike Kafka that I had the other day,
Okay.
and this is a little bit wild. This is pure speculation, shot in the dark guess, but I'm just, the more I thought about it, I think that there's a good chance that Mike Kafka does become a good head coach in the league, or at
Mhm.
least the pathway is there for him. I don't know if it's next year. I don't know if it's with the Giants. I don't think it's going to be. But I think that he has a lot of the things that work for him, right? Like, number one is, so we don't really know much about Mike Kafka, right? So like a lot of this is speculation, but I'll go through what we do know and whatever, right? Number one is we know it's been reported widely how smart he is. He's a smart guy. He played the quarterback position at a very young age. From the time that he ended his NFL career, he went into the coaching role. He picked it up quickly and he climbed up the ladder quickly, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
so he's a smart guy. We saw him in meetings and stuff. He's very well spoken. He's more well spoken than I am. A lot less ums and uhs. He knows how he wants to answer things. He's very polite. He's mild mannered. He's nice to the media. And I think also he's incredibly stoic. I mean, you're talking about the very antithesis of Brian Dable when it comes to speaking. And that's the way he talks to his players, the way he talks to the coaches that we've seen, the way he talks to the media is all
So he's like a
completely
Todd
different.
Bowles type of guy, like
Yeah, I
a
mean,
Jim Caldwell type of
I,
guy.
I think he has more personality than Todd Bowles, right? Like, he does laugh a little bit, he does smile and joke. He had Ryan Dunleavy can't figure out Zoom in 2025. He's laughing about it, whatever, right? Um,
But is he like that during a game?
no, but I mean, I think the point is that like he does have some personality, but what I'm saying is that he's not aggressive or passive aggressive with the media. He doesn't
Mhm.
scream at his assistant coaches, and
Right.
we now know the way he's disciplined Abdul Carter is that he doesn't treat his star players like they are at Club Med. So we know that
Right.
much about him, and he doesn't seem to be overly emotional either. Like, he's very stoic in terms of letting the game not affect him, whatever. We also know that he comes from an interesting background. Like, when we talk about these coaching trees, like with like the McVay coaching tree or the Andy Reid coaching tree and the Bill Belichick coaching tree were like two trees that like people compared coaches from for many years. And it's interesting
Right.
because he kind of comes from both Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. Brian Dable's a Bill
Hmm.
Belichick disciple, kind of, I guess. I
Hmm.
guess he just is. I don't really know what the connections are, but and he was under Andy Reid. So that's kind of like a funny fact. But I think the really interesting thing is that both of those offenses, Andy Reid's and Brian Dable's, from what we've learned, is that they are both very good at manipulating their core offensive philosophies and their scheme around the talent that they have on the roster. They
Absolutely.
don't run rigid systems where it's like, I need this kind of quarterback and this kind of left tackle and these kinds of wide receivers. Like, they don't operate that way. Obviously they have preferences, and like as they have input on talent, they'll get those guys and their scheme works better. But in general, they're good at manipulating their scheme around what they have on the roster and what they're able to acquire, which leads to more chances of success early on, which you need as a head coach these days. You need to show people that you have something to you quickly, because people get fired after 2 years, and there's all kinds of circumstances that are unfair ways to judge a head coach, right? So
Right.
when you have roster limitations, because teams that hire head coaches generally have bad rosters because they're bad teams, or if their GM has some major miscalculations, like drafting an Evan Neal and just doesn't work, right? Like, so that's a premium asset that you don't really get to use as a head coach. This ability and learning from guys that are able to do this is monumentally important for early success or better success, like
Or
out
maximizing what you're starting with, before you
exactly
get the pieces you need. Yeah.
starting with, and then going forward for longevity in your career too. And we don't know a lot about him as a coach because of the really bizarre Giants circumstances that were going on for his entire tenure here. But for me, when I like look at him and you're like, what do you think of him as a head coach? Like, it's very like, I don't really know a lot. But my biggest worry would probably be like, does Mike Kafka walk into a locker room and command respect? Like, is he able to dole out punishment? Do the people shut up and listen to him? Like, does he command that respect, right? And now that he's had up close experiences with the way that Brian Dable treats his coaches and the way that Brian Dable treats his players, and you have very clear results in the 4 years you've been here. You've had, Wink Martindale just quit on you. The way he himself was treated, by Brian Dable, where he probably wanted to leave too, and then the Giants had to block interviews and give him raises to get him to stay. And then you see the way it just doesn't work when you treat your players like this. You guys like Dexter Lawrence are suddenly being questioned, and you have guys running out locker room doors so they can avoid the media. And Graham Gano is talking back and saying that he doesn't miss kicks in pregame warmups and stuff, and people being late to meetings. This, I'm clearly extrapolating way too much from disciplining one series out of Abdul Carter, but it's an incredibly important first act as head coach, that it's possible that he understands that level of like what you need out of your players, what you need out of your coaches, and how to handle them. And if he has that, it seems to me that he has everything else to be a successful head coach. Am I smoking crack? I know I just talked for 10 minutes.
No, no, no. I think this all it's all related. I think it all starts. Let's talk about the Giants specifically. Like Kafka's, I think I agree with you. He has all the attributes and things, and also the demand. I mean, other teams want to interview him to be a head coach. It's not just they picked a name out of a hat. You know, the NFL is a fraternity of 32 clubs and the people that work in it, and they all know each other. They all know strengths and weaknesses, and that he's regarded enough in a situation he's been in for 3 years that did not put the spotlight on him and put him in the best perception of like success. Like when you see somebody like Joe Brady or something, he is in a high profile, either that a high profile offense has been very successful. It's like that guy's really good. He's not been in that situation with this team because, for a variety of reasons. Most of them are not his fault. When you have to deal with, these horrible backup quarterbacks, Jake Froms of the world and the Tommy DeVitos of the world, the Russell Wilsons of the world, that doesn't make you look like a very good offensive coordinator. But in spite of all that, in spite of what the Giants have put on the field, he's getting requests to be interviewed. So I think there is a future for him to be a head coach in this league and be pretty good, like to the points you made. Now, I care about the Giants. And I think this I think is 2 levels higher than just the coach. I think it's higher than the coach and it's higher than the GM. I think it's ultimately the decision of John Mara of how much he wants to change the culture of this team. And, you know, we know we've gone 100,000 times about, this is a family operation. They've been the Giants way for so long. He doesn't like to make change unless they have to, blah, blah, blah. But this team right now is tainted from the Brian Dable era. And right or wrong, Mike Kafka is part of that culture. So the question becomes, and also Joe Shane is part of that culture. The question is going to be, how much does Mara want to change that culture? If he thinks that things are still pretty decent and Shane stays, I have a real gut feeling that Kafka's staying next year. If he thinks we need to throw the babies out with the bathwater, I think Shane's gone after this year. And I think that, obviously Kafka might get interviewed by the next guy, but I don't think he'll be back here. So I think it's ultimately, everything that Kafka does, and I know it's the popular thing to say, this is an audition, and we'll see things in the next several weeks to say this. He might be, looks like a really promising prospect as a head coach, but if they really feel that, for the last 15 years, over 3 general managers and 5 head coaches, that we need to start over again. And I think they're all going to be gone and they start over.
That is interesting, though. The connection between Joe Shane and Mike Kafka. I guess without going into any details, just a yes or no answer.
Yes.
As of today, is Joe Shane back next year?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think the same way. So,
I'll ask you one question, Grump, because you're probably more on the inside than I am. When Mike Kafka was denied, the other teams were denied the interviews for him. Is that at the coaches level or is that the GM level?
I think that's at the ownership level, because you can only be denied for interviews that are lateral moves. I think.
No, you can only be
No,
denied if,
you're right.
right.
But I do think it's at the general manager level because that's like a coaching hire, which is the general manager's responsibility.
So that tells me that Joe Shane really likes Kafka and really sees the potential for him, and why he's still on this staff after all the abuse he took from Brian Dable, the demotions, and all these different things. So I really think that he
That's
sees a
possible.
diamond.
Yeah.
He sees a diamond in the rough with him, and he's invested a lot of sweat equity keeping him around, and he thinks he could be his guy.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely possible. It's interesting because it flies counter to a lot of the stories that are out there, and I don't want to go through like the whole head coaching thing because I know that's going to be like a big episode for us at the end of the year. Is going
That
through
just
all.
sounds like the sheep talking and the and the parrot regurgitating a lot of those things. They're easy, lazy,
But I mean, they're
things.
also they're known sources that tend to have a direct line to the inside of the Giants building, right? And like saying things like they don't want a first time head coach, which again, I don't want to go down this pathway, but like first time head coach scares me a lot less than first time GM. I don't know. Maybe that's just me,
And
but
let's counter that for a second. If they decide to keep Mike Kafka coached 8 games. He's not a
yeah.
first time head coach. Now, he's not a traditional first time head coach. He's like a friend with benefits a little
Yeah,
bit.
but I mean, and the other thing too is that like I don't know. I don't want to go down the whole pathway, but it does fly contrary to the statements of what it appears the Giants building thinks they need out of a head coach, which is really stupid to me because what you need is a leader. Like what you need out of a head coach is what you always need. It's not reactionary to what you didn't have last time. It's not reactionary to what your current locker room is. Head coaching principles have not changed over the years. Like
They haven't had a leader since Coughlin.
the schematics of football are always changing. Okay, so like if you whatever, but what makes a head coach work? Like there are plenty of really brilliant offensive and defensive minds that aren't going to be good head coaches because they lack the skills necessary.
Hmm.
There's so many of like, how come none of these Bill Belichick guys ever become anything? It's because they're not Bill Belichick. They
Right.
just worked under him. So they learned a lot of the things that are important, but they don't embody them. They haven't been that guy. They're just not Bill Belichick. They haven't figured out the
Right.
things you need to do to lead a locker room and make the right decisions in the game. Like that's it. You're more of a college guy than me, and I don't know how you feel about the A&M coach,
Hmm.
Mike Elko, right?
Like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel about him, but he had a really good press conference where he was just like, "Look, man, you know, I didn't give them like a halftime speech to have them come out there and do. It's not how it works. Like they
Right.
came out and they won in the second half because of all the work that we did from the winter all the way through to now. Like my job is not to get emotionally invested in the game. My job is to stay cool when they're being frantic because they're 19 and I'm 48.
Yeah.
And he's right. Like the head coaching principles really don't change. And does that describe Brian Dable to you? Doing hard work in the
It's
offseason
the
with his players and staying level headed when things get emotional. I watched him walk off the field in Buffalo. He was so mad at his assistant coach
yeah.
in
His
Mike
face was
Kafka
red.
when Tyrod Taylor did something stupid and not Mike Kafka that he couldn't even take a sideline interview. He's like, "I'm sorry, I can't even focus right now," and walked away.
Right.
That is not the principle that Brian
That's not a
Dable had.
CEO. That's not, that's not a field general. That's a,
That's just a really smart guy,
right. And the
right?
thing is, that's where Joe Shane, that's where, Mara has to kind of self-identify,
Mm.
what type of, what are the traits that I need to be a successful coach? Not, oh, he runs a lot of 12 personnel or something. It's,
Or, or
are you a
or like
leader
I
of
really
men?
need an offensive guy, or I really need a CEO guy that doesn't have his hand. Like that stuff's not really necessary. You need to be a good coach, is what you need to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, that's really all I've got to say about Kafka. Um, Interesting thought on Jameis Winston. Hypothetically speaking, if you
Sure.
know the Giants went to Jackson Dart in week 5 this year, I think, right?
Yes.
If you know it's a foregone conclusion that you're going to Jackson Dart week 5, end of story, no matter the record, no matter anything. Would you rather have had Jameis Winston play weeks 1 through 4 than Russell Wilson?
No. And here's my reason. If in the scenario you brought up where Jackson Dart is coming in at week 5, it's a lot easier to make that change to be have buy-in from your team in that locker room if you are 1-4. And it's a lot more likely that you're 1-4 with a washed Russell Wilson than a up and down quarter like Jameis who could get hot over a month and be 4-1. And the whole 2025 is all about setting up for the future and getting Jackson Dart prepared to play and get him not make this year a waste. And so for those reasons, we we surmise in the offseason that wins and losses were secondary this year to the development of Jackson Dart. That's why we thought the coaching staff was retained, all of these things we said 100,000 times. So I, I think that, and again, I don't think the plan was Jackson Dart comes in week 5, come hell or high water. I think they were right. And obviously in hindsight, it's right. But I think when they saw the writing on the wall that Russell Wilson was not, you know, capable of being a starting quarterback for this team to, you know, be anywhere near playoff contention, they pulled the plug probably a little sooner than later. Credit to Brian Dable and the staff for having Jackson Dart ready sooner than the anticipated time frame, and he's been as successful as we can hope for right now. But to answer your question, your original question, no, I would not have had. I would not have Jameis start.
Interesting. Um, I think there's a good chance that Jameis Winston would be wearing out his welcome by week 5 anyway, though.
Could be very well
Um,
could be.
I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't think that this roster was good enough to go and compete with for the playoffs anyway. So the wins doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
I guess
But
it.
we're not. we're not competitors. We're not in the locker room. We don't play. It's not our livelihood. It's not our careers. And when these guys are in there, and they, even though if they're 2-3, they still think they got a shot at something. And if they think, if they see players in practice every day, and they still think that Jameis is more ready to play now than Dart is, and you say, okay, I'm putting him Dart because that's my plan week 5. I think you have mutiny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about mutiny. That seems insane to me. I don't think, especially no matter what they think, I think Jackson Dart's debut would offer a different style, but an effective one. So I don't know that there's going to be a mutiny after Jackson Dart goes out and beats the Chargers. So, but I mean, I get your point. Like I certainly think it's valid. I mean, I also understand that this is a hypothetical that you just kind of can't do given what you paid the players. You just can't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know, whatever, but you have to at least give Russell Wilson, like, a couple of games as the starter to fully be like, this is not the investment that we should have put on this guy. Rather than
5 quarters earlier from being benched, he had one of the best statistical games of his career.
right.
I don't care what kind of a sieve Dallas' defense is. It was still in a Hall of Fame career, probably a first balloter, was one of his best games he ever played.
You think he's a first balloter?
Close.
I don't know about that, man. That's pretty crazy. 1 Super Bowl win? All right. Anyway,
Peyton, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that shouldn't be the first thing on your judge. I mean, he's
no,
a
it's
very.
not.
How many times was he an All Pro? I mean,
I have no
he
idea.
was the MVP. I think he
Uh,
was an MVP.
I don't think he was. Wasn't it the guy who had Wasn't it Bobby Wagner?
No, I mean the league MVP.
Oh, I'm sorry.
League
I'm sorry.
MVP.
Uh,
He wasn't
maybe.
the MVP of the game. No,
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was.
it'll be close. It'll be close.
In any case, that's pretty much where we're at this point. There hasn't really been any catastrophic news. We could talk about Cam Scadaboo. I don't really want to. Do you?
Oh my God, leave the guy alone. I mean,
All
you know
right.
something? If this team is 2-8 or 6-5 or this all these crazy stories on in the last week, I don't think that's even a story. I mean, the guy has a life, and
Yeah.
God, we all wish right now we were Cam Scadaboo. That guy is the toast of this city,
Yeah.
and nothing he does in his private time is going to impact what is going to happen to him next year on the football field or impact his recovery time. So just now it's just time to pile on the Giants for everything. So that's all this is.
Yeah. I don't care about Cam Scadaboo at a wrestling event. In any case, not really much to predict for next week against the Lions. You want to just throw me a score?
Um, a get right game for the Lions. I mean, I watched that game Sunday night, and
Mm,
I saw the thing that said Jared Goff pulled a John Starks. He had 2 completions and like 18 attempts,
mm-hmm.
which is insane. I mean, Philly's defense was really something Sunday, but we're not Philly's defense, and it's at home. And climate controlled thing, I think they wallop us.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a sucker punch.
Yeah,
But we'll see. I don't even want to give a score. I just don't think it's going to be close. I think I'm going to be.
but I think you can give a score if we know if Dart's playing or not too.
Yeah, and I think all things are trending towards he is, but I don't think we'll get the full. Actually, let me check that. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Oh, geez, look at that, right in your face. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Giants injury report from today, Tuesday. Was he limited? Oh, they don't even have it. So yeah, we don't know anything today.
Mhm.
So that's that. We don't know anything.
We're also recording this on Tuesday evening, so there's still
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, there's still plenty of time. Yeah, I agree. We're gonna get gut check, and I guess we'll do our episode at a normal time next week, Monday night into Tuesday morning.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
Okay.
I'll be around.
All right. So you know where to find us: iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube for Just Giants. You can also see me on Giants Nation Show. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.